What is up, guys? Big news today. Dev update number 17, Dark Magic Designs. New information from V Rising and Stelnox Studios about the upcoming, as they're now calling it, free expansion coming May 2023. That's the current designated time for when this expansion is going to be coming. This has been something that we've been waiting for a long time. We had a big, balancing update back in the summer of 2022, but since then we haven't had really any updates for the game beyond just bug fixing everything. We've been very much waiting for this upcoming content update, and here we finally are with information about it. This is going to be a deep dive. We're going to go through this blog, talk about what's coming, the exciting news for 2023, and yeah. So if you want to find out what's coming on the roadmap for V Rising, stick around and watch. And without further ado, let's get into this because this is super exciting. As someone who played a lot of V Rising, has continued to play it when he can, and has been just looking forward for more content, for more information about this upcoming expansion. This was greatly desired. Before we get into this, one thing I do want to note before we talk about what's in this blog is what was not in this blog, and that is information about the new zone. Now, I still believe the new zone is coming, the new zone being the area, if you're looking at the map, to the east, it's kind of blurred off. If you go to the Cursed Forest and wrap down, then there's like this kind of like, almost looks like a peninsula of grayed out area that you can, with admin commands, you can teleport into to see like it's like frozen wasteland. I still believe that's coming out with this expansion. Maybe it's not, maybe they're pushing that back, but they've teased that a lot in previous blogs. I would be surprised if it did not come out in this expansion. But let's focus on what is in this blog because there's a lot of cool information and I'm super excited about this. So, like we mentioned, we're going to kind of skim through a lot of this, but May 2023 is the free expansion, as they're calling. Super exciting that it's coming out with this update. The big focus, they said, will primarily be about strengthening our foundations with new ways to live out the vampire fantasy. To us, this means enhancing the way you already play the game by giving you more of what you already love, but also means adding layers of depth and complexity to the world to masterfully tie things together. We're taking this time to build the game out and prepare for a satisfying endgame where we can build up to an apex moment that lets you fully realize your potential. Now, this is my curiosity of, because there's focus now on the foundations, maybe they aren't adding the new zone. Maybe they're like, this update's all gonna be about the creating and reaffirming the current play style, and then we'll add the new zone and then the in-game mechanic they've talked about in the past with Dracula. Maybe that's what that is, but we'll have to see once more information comes out. But in terms of density, what this is going to be talking about, new layers of enrichment like multiple floors and jewels, which we've talked about this a bit in the past, but this goes into a deeper dive on the jewels. But multiple floors is something that's been talked about. They said they're creating, being able to have like levels to your castle, not just all be on the flat ground, so you can build vertically and not just horizontally. Jewels, which are going to be a way of what's the word, kind of personalizing your spells and making them into a way that have different effects and buffs and debuffs that will allow you to have a bit more personalized play style, and other things like that. So we'll have to see how it fully fits out once they release all the jewels and information and we can actually test it. But in the meantime, let's hop into what we do have. Now, this next section is going to be the beef of this. We're talking about the magic schools, the jewels, and new tools. So the thing that they kind of talked about is that they had a lot of feedback that the one common theme that surfaced was that our ever clever vampire community imagined a world of greater spell variety and more in-depth interactions between them. And this is something that is true that I talked about for a while. The meta in terms of like PvP got stale after a while because there's only so much depth to the combat personalization that eventually it was hard to not just run Chaos Volley plus a shield or a counter, etc. Right? And so they have looked on a way to kind of update this more holistically, and be able to have different variations. And the core way that they are doing that is with jewels. Jewels are a new item type used to strengthen and modify spell powers individually. So what that means is you acquire these jewels, which they said this is something vampires will begin to find around the time they're killing Clive the Firestarter and similar to the V-Bloods. They can be dropped by standard units, V-Bloods, and chests, but most often will be found in more extravagant treasure chests, which you can identify by their eye-catching gold detailing. So you get these items, and what you'll be able to do is apparently tie these jewels to different kind of spells from the sounds of it. So originally they had it into weapons and magic sources, but it found to be inflexible. So for these reasons, jewels now slot into each individual spell, and as long as they're equipped, they cannot be dropped on death, which is very big. I think that'd be a concern on like the PvP hard mode, like hardcore mode, where you drop everything on your death. If you drop your jewels that you have attached, that's gonna really just hurt you in terms of being able to keep up and fight in the future. Even if you get your gear back, if you just don't have the jewels that the people who win the early fights have, the snowball will just be even worse for those guys, or worse for the people not on the on the winning side. So you equip an ability, it stays there forever. And then an extra spell jewel can always be a valuable bargaining tip with a potential ally, blah, blah, blah. So the modifications available on every jewel found will be randomized. And each spell has many different gameplay altering options that can manifest in these magical treasures. Some effects are unique to that spell, but others will be shared between others of the same spell school. The earliest jewels you will find will have one modification on them, but in later areas you'll be finding ones infused with up to 3 different effects. So that tells me there's gonna be like 3 tiers to the jewels, just like there are in terms of like the core items right now. Like you have your copper tier, your iron tier, and then like your dark silver tier in the game at the moment. That tells me it'll probably follow similar. We have like the tier 1 jewels found in Farbane, tier 2 found in Dunley, and then tier 3 maybe Chris Forest, but for sure Silverlight. And so that makes a lot of sense, kind of scaling it that way. If you got like a tier 3 jewel early on and you're fighting like the low level bosses, you can just breeze the count even faster, I consume now, unless they're going to be buffing the bosses with this update. But this will allow a lot of customization. I'm really excited to see the actual details of what these are, but it sounds like it'll be jewels that are tied to specific spells. So maybe you'll have a jewel of Chaos Volley that has a modification, or it'll be tied to save spell school, so a jewel of blood magic. And so different stuff like that will allow you to have a lot more customization, which I think is really awesome, to just be able to allow that. Now on top of that, with the jewels, we do have some information. So Yearning Baba is a jewel tier 1. So this we're talking about. So this is for a Shadow Bolt. This is a Shadow Bolt jewel. It makes it explodes on hit, dealing 29% damage and inflicting leech on nearby enemies. So if you attach this jewel to your Shadow Bolt, instead of it just being a single target slam, it shoots out and hits them. When it hits, it'll now do like a little explosion, probably a little AoE damage, dealing 29% damage. So all of a sudden, Shadow Bolt goes from being like this kind of almost, not like tricky, but it's almost kind of fun little thing where people often use Shadow Bolt to like, you get like a stun off, like your slash your stun into like a Shadow Bolt for a big burst of damage. Now you actually have an AoE option with the Shadow Bolt to play around with that. We can move on to the other ones they share. Malignant Claw. This is a tier 3 jewel, so this would be one realistically I'm guessing that we'll find in Silverlight or the Cursed Forest. And this is for Corpse Explosion. This inflicts agony on target affected by Condemn. Agony deals 12% damage 4 times over the duration. Triggers a second lesser explosion at the same location, dealing 56% damage, and increases the duration of the snare by 0.6 seconds. So again, now we have all these other modifications for Corpse Explosion. We have a DOT. It makes a second explosion go off for a little bit less, and the snare duration is increased. So if you hit it and you snare, you can potentially get that second explosion off, depending on probably how it's positioned, if like right on them, if they can get out or not, if they have a dash. But this is really interesting again, because now all of a sudden Corpse Explosion, which was an ability not the most powerful, not often used in PvP, sometimes in PvE, all of a sudden you get this jewel as a game changer in terms of, wait, this is something that if I'm rocking duos, my buddy has a frost build, he freezes them, I get a snare and 2 explosions. That's a huge burst of damage and changes the fight completely, right? And then lastly, the last jewel that they share, Lunar Moon. This is a tier 2, and this is for Spectral Wolf. This consumes Weaken to spawn a Wisp, healing self or ally for 36% based on your spell power, increases maximum bounce by 1. So what this sounds like to me is before when you shot out Spectral Wolf, it would bounce around, it would weaken the opponents. It sounds like, based on how I'm reading this description, is you lose the Weaken component to then instead spawn a Wisp that heals you or an ally for 36% of your spell power. So all of a sudden you're trading off, okay, no longer I'm gonna use this ability, but it's not gonna have the debuff anymore. I'm gonna have a Wisp that heals, as well as it increases the maximum bounce. So all of a sudden, now these abilities, maybe a Chaos Volley, you sacrifice the fact that it doesn't burn anymore to get a third Chaos Volley or whatever it might be. All of a sudden they're not just tweaking the numbers or making it go off a second time or anything like that. Now it's changing the strategy, what the core use of the spell is, which I think is super, super exciting. The other big change that they have is for the spell school revamp. Right now, the 5 prime schools of in Magic and V Rising: Blood, Unholy, Illusion, Chaos, and Frost. Right? There's like the 5 pages of spells. They have like their own options you choose from. They have now moved some spells around. It seems like they might have added some spells and made each like spell school have an actual like archetype like buff to it that we'll get into later. And so yeah, let's hop into the different schools. This is a good example of how they've now are moving like the mosquito from unholy to the illusion with different effects, right? So they've also been working on, before we get into the schools, they are also doing some changes to like this shield spells. They now have a recast to send out a projectile. So you hold up the barrier, the chaos barrier, the ward of the damned, or the frost barrier, and if you don't use it the whole time, you can recast it to send out a projectile, a chaos bolt, a wave of unholy energy, or a cone of cold. So now you can have like some strategy with those abilities as well. But each group will now have 5 standard spells, 1 veil, which is like their dash, and 2 ultimate abilities. So let's hop into that. And also, a little fun thing here, we'll also be seeing a brand new 6 spell school in the free expansion, but let's leave you pondering that mystery a little while longer. They don't give too much information on what that is, except these are about to be a bit more important. And it's a picture. I'll open up the second tab. It's a picture of a regular topaz for this. The only thing I could think of, if this is supposed to be a hint at the next spell schools, I feel like topazes in like fantasy genres are typically associated with like lightning. So maybe it's like the next school is like a lightning, but that's kind of what chaos is right now. So maybe not, but that's just my guess. But we'll have to see what the next one is once we have more information. So let's run through again. If you want to read the full information, the link of this blog will be in the description. I'm just going to do a quick TLDR for blood magic. Blood spells now inflict a leech on your enemies, allowing you to attack an inflicted foe and replenish your life force, much like a leech. Blood has acquired a little gift from the Unholy branch. The AoE spell Purgatory, which was the kind of green thing that would heal and damage depending on if you're an ally or not in it, is now the blood magic tree. So you can see this all of some of these. I'm guessing this is the in the middle here. This ability is Purgatory, just a new image. And then it kept Heart Strike and Crimson Beam. But blood magic, not too changed. Just now, all abilities will kind of do a leech effect, that where you affect the leech and then attacking an afflicted foe, you replenish life force. And that was a bit more of a life steal inherent with blood magic. For Unholy, I think this was really cool. The unique debuff for Unholy inflicts an effect that amplifies damage on the target, but also has a cool secondary effect. If an enemy dies under the effect of an Unholy Amplify, a skeleton will rise from its corpse to aid you in battle for a short time. Now, I'm not sure if the skeleton will be tied to the level of like the enemy you kill, like if you kill like another player versus like a simple archer and Farbin. I'm guessing they might, but I think it's cool that now Unholy, when you hit someone, it inflicts a debuff that now they take amplified damage on subsequent like hits. And if they die under the Unholy Amplify effect, you now get a skeleton to join your, Unholy army, which I think is super cool and really makes this Necromancer spell magic school fit the theme a lot more. Because before you didn't really have that feeling as much. So I think that really is going to set that up nicely. And again, it's gonna conjure a trick from the Illusion School. Our favorite spiny fellow, the Spectral Assassin, has now found a new home as the Unholy Death Knight. So again, we can see here, so the Spectral Assassin is now in the Unholy Magic. We no longer have the mosquito. So you can see, like, it looks like lips. I'll be honest, it's been a couple of weeks since I last played V Rising, so maybe I'm forgetting some abilities, but that looks new. And so that might be a new ability tied to the Unholy tree. But that being said, this is what the Unholy is now. And again, you get a debuff, or you apply a debuff when you hit people. For Chaos, they're going to keep the idea that Chaos is just raw DPS, which is going to be interesting to see how this fares with PvP. If they're just making Chaos even better at just raw damage, maybe the Chaos abilities just stay dominant. But we'll have to see. But again, the Ignite debuff is going to stay. Which is going to be just like a damage over time burn on people from Chaos abilities. And they're also kind of doing different like small tweaks. For instance, the Void spell no longer pushes enemies away, but instead just draws them towards the center of the void, which I think is really smart and should have been probably what it was originally, because it made hitting both of them hard. But if you like now, you can hit one, pulls them in, and hit the second. So I think that makes it a lot more interesting. So, but for the most part, I think Chaos was the most untouched of the trees so far. The Illusion, this is going to be one that has a imbued with 2 unique mechanics. The specialty will inflict a weakening effect on foes, making them deal less damage with their attacks. Casting Illusion won't just cause a debuff, it will also provide a buff to the caster. The Phantasm buff will stack with each cast. With each stack, it will increase your chance to bypass your standard spell cooldowns and give a user a free ability cast. This is similar to the benefit currently available from the Skull or Blood type. So you use your illusion abilities, it applies a weaken on the foes, which means they deal less damage, and additionally you get a stack of you use your abilities to get a stack to potentially increase your chance of just having a spell cooldown reset for a free ability cast, just like at like 100% Scholar Blood. So I think that's cool. It makes being able to use like a lot of your like illusion abilities have a bit more use. Like they're not weakened, so they can't hit you as hard. They do catch you in your illusions, and you can potentially get your spells back up immediately. Kind of keep that phantasmal assassin gameplay at a higher level, which I think is super cool. Additionally, they are taking 2 spells from other specialties. So the Unholy's Mosquito and Blood's Crimson Aegis have been reworked to fit the new Shrouded siblings. So as you can see here, the Mosquito's here. There's now like a spear ability here in the middle, and then the Crimson Aegis on the top right is now in the illusion magic. So we'll have to see how that all plays out with like the revamps, but I think that's cool and it kind of makes a lot of sense. And then lastly, for Frost Magic, what we have, Spell School, we all love to hate, is being horrifically petrified by Frost Magic. Not too many changes here. I think this ability on the second row down on the right might be new, unless it's a different emblem for sure, but I'm not sure if it's a brand new spell or what exactly that might be. But there'll be specialization and new ways of consuming the chill debuff to freeze your foes, and the big thing here is chill effects also now affect V-Blood units, making it so you can actually freeze V-Bloods, which is huge because it kind of just made Frost really bad against V-Bloods because you couldn't actually freeze them and you're just dealing less damage. So now that's a whole strategy that you could freeze V-Bloods, which I think is super cool. So yeah, those are the changes to the spell magic schools. I think all this sounds great. I'm really happy with how this looks and how this sounds, and making these new spells in the spell books kind of have their own style and more optimization within the schools of magic, and then adding on the jewel system. I think this is going to be awesome for the gameplay of V-Rising. Like really, really awesome. And again, they changed the UI, nothing too crazy. And then two last things to be legendary. They're now adding basically legendary weapons to be dropped. I think a great example of this is the General Soul's Reaper, which is a Reaper that you can get that like would make your spell abilities be stronger, but you lose like physical damage. I think that's a good example of probably what they're thinking for legendary weapons. They want to add more of those. That's awesome. Love that. I think that's great. I think it gets very boring late games just have the same weapons and armor as everyone. So having more legendary weapons to kind of seek after, fight over, and kind of control. I think that's awesome. No issues with that. Not too much information yet, so we'll have to come back once we have more. And then lastly, this is a big change. This new feature is called Territories. Basically, what they're thinking of doing is instead of the current building system of you place your castle heart and then tile by tile you claim land, now they want to categorize it into plots of land that you just claim the plot. So if there's like an area on the map, like here, let me pull this up real fast. All right, so here is the map of V-Rising. So let's say you start off in the game and you are going to go and build your castle heart right here, right where this little thing is popping up. Instead of claiming and putting down a heart and then like filling up the zone tile by tile, you now would probably claim like this whole plot, like this whole area you would now claim. That's what it sounds like they're trying to do with the territories. In brief, they said the goals of the system are to fit more players in the world in a more balanced way, reduce player friction. This will prevent players from blocking each other's bases, from reaching the road, whether accidentally or intentionally. Also prevent players from setting on the same plateau or predefined space and learning eventually that they don't have enough space to build properly. prevents various technical issues like vampires being able to land on unclaimable ledges like the little corners, clans building castles just to buffer their main castle, or building armies of servants to defend, will make detecting and communicating how full or active servers are easier. This has a lot of pros and cons. I'm going to start, the biggest con is for like competitive servers, like the aspect of how you build your base and what you build, and the strategy behind that was a huge component of that. On the flip side, I do like the fact that this allows for better features overall, and it kind of clarifies where castles are built, like how you can defend them. It makes it more about what plot you're going to grab instead of like how you're going to like finagle a weird building. And like they said, they also hopefully help with stuff like being able to build, like clans building castles just to buffer their main castle, so like a secondary castle around it that's just walls, and having huge armies of servants to defend it. It makes it a bit more of a controlled system that they can build around. So pros and cons with, I'll have to see in actual practice to see how this actually works. But it does kind of open up doors to cool new stuff like they discuss here. Using this, implement a mechanic to move your castle between two territories, so you can have like your castle here and then pay something whatever and then teleport your castle to like this spot up here and now have this plot claimed. I think that's cool and kind of follows that, you know, Dracula flying castle kind of fantasy. But yeah, this is something I'm gonna have to actually see and play through to see how I feel about. I think just because there's a lot of pros and cons with the old building system, a lot more customization, while this is gonna like structure how castles have to be built almost, instead of like being able to do some cool designs, especially for like role play or something. But yeah, we'll have to see how it actually is implemented. But yeah, that's the blog. 2023 is a glorious year to be a vampire. Again, to kind of tease this image, this is kind of very similar to like, it's almost gives me like steampunk magic vibes. They've teased images like this before. I think it's about the new zone. But yeah, that's this update. Huge, a lot of information, a lot of exciting information, and I don't even think that this is everything coming in this 2023 free expansion, because this is all more about the gameplay and the combat and the upcoming, you know, castle changes. They haven't even talked about the new zone or anything like that potentially that's coming with this. So, but yeah, a lot of great information. I'm really stoked for this. I love V Rising. I truly do. I've been waiting for more content for this game, and this is just so exciting. So hopefully you guys are excited as well. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, catch you all next time. Peace out.